Hello all, you're watching Rest Stop. And hello again, one and all. I am Vincent and welcome back now to part 3 of our top 10 tightwad travel tips for traveling on an extremely tight budget. Now, if you've not seen the last 2 parts to this series, go back and check them out first, especially the first part where we kind of go through and give a brief summary of all these 10 tips. Again, these are really in no particular order, and I should say this in every video, this is just for entertainment purposes only. Don't go taking my advice and get yourself into any kind of trouble out there. But these are just some tips that have helped me over the years to be able to travel and explore the open road on a very tight budget, which I've pretty much always had. Now, today's topic isn't going to be nearly as controversial as the last one, so we can go ahead and get right into this without any more disclaimers of legality and all that, because today's is something I do highly recommend you do, and that is tip number 9, travel with a friend. So traveling with a friend can have all kinds of benefits, especially when it comes to traveling on a budget. And the first one of all of those, of course, is it helps split the bill up. So in times past, I took a lot of trips with my friend Claude. I went to the beach a few times, out to Tennessee, and just a few places here and there. But something we would always do on these trips, especially the overnight ones to the beach, is we would split the bill to a T. Now, when it came to eating fast food restaurants, things like that, then, usually to each his own. You kind of pay for yourself when it comes to food. But for everything else, it really helps if you can just divide that budget, especially when it comes to gas, because if you allow maybe $100 or $150 for gas on your trip, well, that quickly becomes $50 or $75 if you have another person. So that leaves a lot of extra room for more things in your budget. And another expensive one that, of course, we'll touch on again later is lodging. Now, back then, we used to camp a lot, and, it was really usually only $20 for a campsite for the night, but still, that brought it down to $10 a piece, and had another $10 in our pocket to eat on later. Now, I know it's been quite a few years since our first trip to the beach, which was back in 2014, but he and I were actually able to go to Carolina Beach, which is about 5.5 hours away, on less than $110 each. Now, you might not be able to do that nowadays, but it shouldn't be too much farther off. Things haven't gone up that much since then. But of course, I'll get to more of that in a later video, especially when we talk about budgeting everything. But the point I'm trying to make here is, when you have another person, there's multiple ways to go about this. You can split it all right down the middle, 50-50, or you can take the route that me and my wife do now, where one of us, usually she, will go ahead and book the rooms a few months in advance. She has the hotels.com account and all that, so she builds these points. I let her go ahead and take care of that. She can book those rooms a month or 2 in advance if we know where we're going. Then when it comes to the actual trip, I'll take over, the gas or the food. Sometimes we'll still have to end up splitting one or the other. But lots of times it'll work out that maybe if we're only going somewhere for a night, I'll take the gas and food, she'll take the rooms, and it evens out pretty well. But there are so many ways that you can do this. And again, when we get to that later step of budgeting everything, I'll show you how to break down each individual little thing you're going to need to allow money for, your lodging, your gas, your food, all that. And when you have another person, you can just kind of look at the total cost of everything and just divide it up however you see fit to do. Now, of course, there are many more benefits to traveling with a friend that really don't have to do with traveling on a budget. One of those is shift driving. If you're going somewhere a really long ways away, and as long as you've got a friend that you're comfortable with driving your car, and, they're insured, they can legally do so, then if you want to split up that driving, that's perfectly okay. Now, on most trips I've ever taken like that, I do all the driving just because I kind of feel like I'm cheating if I don't drive the entire trip. But that's just me. That's just how my messed up mind works, but it doesn't have to be the same for you. I do recommend letting someone take the wheel for a while so you can actually take the time to look out the window and see what's around you. Because when you're driving, your main priority really needs to be keeping your eyes on the road and keeping everyone else in the car alive. So when you let someone else take the wheel, take the time to just sit back and enjoy your surroundings. Or of course, if you are driving for a long period at night and you really can't see anything, by all means, take that time to take your little nap. But if you can't sleep in a car, or you just really don't want to and still want to be able to enjoy your surroundings, then that extra person can also help you keep alert. I've had some of the best conversations in my life just driving down the road at night with a friend. All that talking, it keeps your mind going, keeps you from falling asleep or even just getting drowsy, and that's definitely a dangerous thing to do at the wheel, and it can happen all times of the day. It doesn't have to be just at night. I actually get a little more tired, I think, when I've been driving all day because, you're sitting there in the sun, it gets kind of warm, and it's just your body's natural reaction to just start drifting to sleep there. You definitely want to stay alert, and, if you're not really in the mood for conversation, then just put on some music, of course. Surely you can both find something you agree on to listen to, but I do recommend, if you are traveling with a friend, take that time to really get to know each other. I've brought this up before on my other shows, on my other channels, especially on the Smoking Hour. When you've got this one-on-one time with another person, it's just the two of you and the open road especially, you can really get to know each other a lot better in those situations. You might have been best friends for years, just as Claude and I were. At that point, we had been best friends for like 5 years. But on these trips, we found out so many things about each other that we had no clue before that. And you can talk about the most random of things. I mean, it can be about what's going on in your life, or, you could really get philosophical with this stuff. We've talked about time travel, the possibility of alien life, ghosts, whatever. You really have nothing but time when you're on the road like that. And of course, to touch back on our last point of bringing protection with you on these trips, obviously, if you travel in numbers, you have a much better chance of defending yourself. So, always use the buddy system, have a friend with you, and if there is any type of altercation that may arise, it's a lot better to have 2 against 1. Now, when I tell you all of this, I want to mention specifically that I do mean bring one friend. As I mentioned in the first part of this series, when you bring more than one friend, it really kind of muddies the waters there. I don't recommend traveling with more than one other person. I know a lot of people probably are not going to like that advice, and a lot of people tell me, oh no, I like to travel with, 2 or 3 of my best friends, we have a good time. Sure, maybe you do. I'm not going to say you don't, but I just know from experience and from what a lot of other people have told me, lots of times when it's more than one person, things do become complicated. Someone I know went to the beach a few years ago with 2 of her best friends, and she was miserable that entire trip. She said it was 3 of the worst days of her life because she essentially became the third wheel. Even though she was driving and this really was her trip, the other 2 friends just kind of stuck together and left her out of the equation. And that happens in a lot of these situations. So, if you are going to travel with more than one person, then definitely 2 at the most, but I don't even suggest that. Just one other person. And I really want to suggest against big groups of people. I don't care if your car can hold 6 to 8 people, maybe you might have a big van or something. You do not want that many people on a road trip with you. Because the old cliche is correct. One bad apple really can spoil the entire bunch. If one person in that car just happens to be in a bad mood, they sometimes like to take everyone else down with them. And you really can't enjoy a trip that way. And also, when there's that many people in the car, no one can really agree on anything. Usually when it's 2 people, you can agree on some kind of music together, on what kind of food you want to eat, where you want to go, the sights you want to see, when you want to stop. But when there's 3 or more people, you can't agree on anything. And sometimes you got that one person driving who won't stop for anything, and someone really needs to get out, stretch their legs. Someone might want to move around, and no one wants to sit in the back seat for all that time. Yeah, you might could stretch out your legs, but as I said in the first part, and we'll get into in later videos, you really want your back seats empty. So again, just one other person. And not to mention, even just 1 to 2 hour short trips that I've been on in a carload of people, if you're like me, you get overstimulated very easily. And when that happens, I'm usually that one to get in the bad mood and can potentially bring everyone else's mood down. The radio might be going, you got 2 people talking back and forth this way, you got conversations going on all around you, the one who's driving keeps turning the radio up more, and it just becomes such an annoyance, such an overbearance to me that I really can't take it. Now, you might be completely different, and if you really have to have more than one other person with you, then by all means, do whatever you want. I'm just trying to give you some tips from things that I have experienced in the past. And while adding more people can potentially cut the bill down even more, splitting gas 3 ways is better than 2. Again, I really think the cons outweigh the pros in that situation. So I'll leave it at that, just one other person. And with that, I'd also made a rule for myself over the years that was 1 or none. If I couldn't just get one other person to ride with me, then I took the trip alone. Again, I don't really recommend that, especially if you're younger, especially if you're a young lady. I don't recommend solo traveling, but I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't enjoy a solo travel every now and then. Obviously anymore, I love traveling with my wife. We pretty much go everywhere together. But even last summer, I had to take a trip alone because she had to work. And, there's still something just really nice in just getting out there alone with your thoughts for a while. You could turn on the radio, just be alone with your own thoughts and really enjoy the open road at your own pace. Again, the main thing though is just be safe out there. And since there is safety in numbers, I really want to stick that landing there and just say, just bring a friend along. And another advantage that, I've used in the past, and really, it might not be as relevant anymore, but traveling with another person really comes in handy when it comes to navigation. Like I said earlier, your main job if you're driving is keep your eyes on the road, keep everyone else in the car alive. But you got another person, they can be your co-pilot, your navigator. And, on all my old trips, all I used was a map. Sometimes I had some Google Maps directions printed out, because a lot of these trips were well before I ever had a smartphone. And, that's kind of commonplace now. Most people use their GPS. I still don't like them, but I understand a lot of people use them. So you might not need that extra person with you, but again, that can also come in handy with if you want to find some place to stop and eat, you need to pull over and rest for a minute. Someone else can be looking that up for you rather than you fiddling with the GPS or your phone while you're driving. But that's about all for that tip. Really kind of a cut and dry one, not really a whole lot extra to add on this point today. But if there are any more pros or cons that you might possibly have as for traveling with another friend, definitely leave them in the comments below. I'm sure I've made one person mad out there at least, and I'm sure they won't hesitate to let me know that. But as always, it's now time to add a new patch to the Been There, Done That Wall of Fame. And today, as I draw another one at random, we have Fontana Dam. I actually just mentioned this in the last episode. Fontana Dam and Fontana Lake actually borders Great Smoky Mountains National Park. It's really a sight to see. It's the tallest dam in all of the eastern United States, I want to say. Definitely the tallest dam in the Appalachian Mountains. Now, naturally, it pales in comparison to something like Hoover Dam or some of these out west. But as compared to everything in the east, it is absolutely huge. And you can actually walk across the entire dam. That's something really fun to do. The Appalachian Trail actually crosses the dam, and something that I mentioned the last time I was out there was a movie that kind of went under the radar starring Robert Redford called A Walk in the Woods. There's actually a scene in the movie where they're crossing Fontana Dam, but it is absolutely beautiful, just beautiful views from there. And I really love going there in the wintertime, especially when the Great Smoky Mountains are covered in snow or ice. It really is just a picture-perfect view, something you'd see on a postcard. And while you are on your trip to the Great Smoky Mountains, or just in the extreme western part of North Carolina, I definitely recommend taking a side trip to Fontana Dam. But that'll about do it for this episode of Rest Stop and our top 10 tightwad travel tips. If you have any experiences, be it good or bad, with traveling with a friend or, solo traveling, or traveling with multiple friends, definitely let me know in the comments below. As always, if you're new to the channel or you just like the content here, please be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you've not already done so that you never miss a future episode of Rest Stop, Next Exit, or On the Road with Vincent. Again, I'm Vincent Rains. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all at the next Rest Stop.